Now that we've finished milling some really nice fresh flour, we're going to show how easy it is to make bread. We have images of our grandmother kneading dough with lots of arm muscle on the kitchen counter. Today we're able to do it quite easily and quickly because most of us have busy lives. This particular Bosch kitchen mixer is one of the best on the market. It has an 800-watt motor. Even though the bowl is quite small, it actually holds up to 20 cups of flour, which is a little more unique compared to some of the other name brands. A mixer can be added onto the side, food processor. There's numerous attachments that you can complement your mixer with. The bowl itself is really easy to use. It has a double lid system, and inside the bowl, this is the dough hook, and this is what does all the kneading for you. So instead of your grandmother's muscles, now we can use something very simple like this. So the bowl snaps on to the base, you put the dough hook in, and then you can use your two lids. So the first lid just slips in just like that. Now, when you're making your bread, this will make easily 6 loaves at a time. So that's what we're going to do right now. We start with 2 tablespoons of bread yeast. I typically buy the big containers at a Costco or somewhere like that. It's easy to find. And here I've pre-warmed about 6 cups of milk. Now, when you're making bread, you can use a number of liquids. You can use water, which is cheap and easy. If you have milk in the fridge, or buttermilk, sour cream, yogurt, there's really quite a number of liquids that you can use. You can combine them. Sometimes I use part milk and part water. So you warm it up so it's just nice room temperature, not too hot, not too cold. You want to activate your yeast. So we just slowly pour this into our yeast. And now that the warm liquid is in the yeast, this is an instant bread yeast, so it really activates right away. Normally, I use the slightly larger beaded yeast, and that just takes an extra moment to sit in the warm liquid. And then we can pulse it. We have an M setting on this machine, so you just pulse it a few times to make sure that the yeast and the liquid are nicely mixed together. Now, once that is starting to dissolve, then we start with the flour. So we take our mill, and we can open it up, and we can start to take out some of this lovely flour that has been freshly milled. And again, this particular combination is a bit of spelt, a bit of kamut, and a bit of winter red. This is a 6-loaf recipe. We put in about 7.5 cups or so of flour. There's nothing that has to be exact with this. As I'll show you in the end, there's just a little trick you keep in mind about the moisture and the dryness. And once you figure out that relationship, you're basically good to go. Okay, so now we're going to turn it on number 1. We're going to let it mix just so that it's all combining nicely. And after it is mixed for about a minute or 2, then typically it's best to turn it off and just let it sit for a few minutes. Your bread will be a little bit lighter if you allow it some breathing time. So you want the yeast and the warm liquid and half of your total flour content approximately. Everything is sitting there getting mixed together and warming up there with the yeast and the warm liquid. We can go ahead and add our next couple of ingredients. So a half a cup, this is for 6 loaves of bread. We can use a half a cup of oil, and you can use between a 1/4 cup to a half cup of a sweetener. This could be applesauce, it could be sugar, it could be molasses, it could be honey, really anything you please. And some families like it a lot sweeter. If you're making cinnamon buns or something else with your dough and you do want it sweeter, just increase your sugar content. And again, it could be applesauce. Whatever's left in your fridge, feel free to use it. You can use, per 6 loaves, you're going to use a 1.5 tablespoons of salt. And we toss the salt in there. And again, nothing has to be exact. That's the beauty of a bread recipe. You can use all kinds of things that you have left over. Now we're going to add that in. And then we're going to turn it on and let it mix for a minute. Now, because we're using only a little bit of the winter red hard wheat, it's recommended that you add some gluten. Now, gluten can be bought from a health food store, or again, you can buy it in a larger quantity, share it with some neighbors. This is necessary the less of the winter red that you have, the less of the wheat you have. If you start going into kamut or spelt or other flours, then they do recommend that you use, again, this is for 6 loaves, so this is a half a cup. So we add that in and let that mix in nicely. Now that all your ingredients here have been nicely mixed, then we can start adding the rest of the flour. And again, for 6 loaves, it's approximately 15 cups. So we add them one at a time. Now the main trick with getting successful bread with this machine, rather than worrying about quantities, if you add your flour a cup at a time, you want to aim to the point where it's cleaning the bowl. It's not sticking to the side. You keep adding cup by cup. And again, we're going to be adding at least another 7 cups. And as it mixes in, it will gradually get drier and drier. As the dough is getting closer to being done, you'll see it totally cleans the bowl, and it will start to come up towards the lid. It sort of somersaults through the bowl. And after it's done this step for a couple of minutes, then we can turn it off and we do sort of a test for moisture. And this is where you're allowed to really use any kind of leftovers. If you had leftover potatoes, leftover yogurt, sour cream, any kind of liquid, applesauce, honey, molasses, yams, pumpkin puree, anything that you really want to include in your bread for nutrition purposes. You really won't taste a lot of these ingredients as such. You can throw them in, and then you just keep adding your dry flour until when you touch it, it feels moist, but it's not leaving any residue on your fingers. And that is perfectly what you want. You just want it to be completely clean around the bowl, and you don't want any stickiness showing. And then you know that your dough is ready to go. If it's too dry, your bread may be a bit dense. If it's too wet, your bread won't rise very well in the pans. You may get a soft spot in the middle. The bread has finished mixing, then you simply take the bowl off the base and you just pull it out. I've lightly oiled the counter, and then if you put a little bit of oil on your fingers, it makes handling whatever dough there is really quick and easy. So this is the only messy step. So just take the dough off the hook, pull it out of the bowl. Your bowl is basically clean. There's not anything left in your bowl. And then on the oiled surface, just basically give it a couple of good kneading sessions just to shape it a little bit. And then with your knife, I'm going to make 5 loaves out of this. So I'm going to aim to cut 5 relatively equal portions. You want your portion sizes to be about the same so that your bread will cook as evenly as you can. So if you don't get it right the first time, that's fine. You can just readjust your sizes. So here I've got 5 bits of dough. Now again, I'm going to make bread today. If I decide I don't want to make bread, I could use this dough and roll it out. I could make cinnamon buns with it, orange rolls. I can really do a number of things with the dough. You can change the sugar content in it if you want a sweeter product. So we just take each batch of dough, and we basically just, the machine has done all the work for us. So we just put it into a nice little loaf, give it that on the top for decoration if you wish. Then we take our baking pan. This is a good typical size. Then you take your nice butter, and it's actually better to use butter in the pan. For a long time I was using oils, and I found that the bread didn't come out nearly as easily. And then I read a tip in an older cooking book, and it said simply to use the butter, and the butter really works quite a bit better in terms of getting the bread out of the pan when you're done. So you simply take your nice little loaf and you pop it in your pan. It's going to double in size, so you want to make sure you have lots of room for it to breathe around, and then you do the same thing with the others. Put the loaves in the oven, and you preheat the oven at 200, and then you turn it off. Whatever way you position your racks, make sure that there's plenty of room for them to rise, because they will double in size. So 35 minutes is typically good time for them to sit in the oven. This is a quicker way of rising your bread. If you're not in a hurry, then you can leave them on the counter in a place that there's no draft, and you can certainly do it that way. But most of us at this stage are eager to get on with tasting the bread, so this is an easy method, and 35 minutes should do it.